This presentation, titled The Psychology of Auditing in Quality 4.0, comes to us from Milton Krivokuca. Milt is a chair emeritus and subject matter advisor of the Master of Science Quality Assurance Program at California State University, Dominguez Hills. He has also taught master's degree courses in critical thinking and quality theories at California State University Fullerton, Illinois State University, University of California Riverside, Al Yamama University in Riyadh, and the University of Redlands. Additionally, he has presented contemporary quality topics at conferences in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, as well as countless locations throughout the United States and Canada. Milt is a past chair of the Quality Management Division of ASQ, an ASQ Fellow, an ASQ Los Angeles Section 700 Simon Collier Award recipient, and 2020 ASQ Section 701 Orange Empire Quality Guru of the Year. His advanced degrees include an MBA, MA, and a DBA. His professional certifications include CMQ-OE, CQA, CQT, CQPA, CCT, CQE, CSSGB, and CSSBB. He is president of Milton Krivokuca and Associates, based in Wilmington, North Carolina, and QCTS instructor with QC training, based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And with that, take it away, Milt.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for spending a few minutes with me today while I discuss this critical part of auditing, psychology. Yes, auditors, in addition to all of their skills, are going to have to develop to be almost psychologists in order to elicit the information they need to make a successful audit. Thanks for that great introduction. I'll skip over that information on my personal background, and we'll get right down to the subject itself, the objectives of this presentation. The information in this presentation provides auditors with a psychological strategy by which to accomplish effective quality audits as they relate to human diversity and assessing subjective data supporting quality management systems, both virtual and face-to-face. The objective data is fairly easy. We can get a computer printout, and there's arrays and numbers and values in front of us that are pretty easy to audit. But it's those subjective, those opinions, the expert commentary related to the areas of the audits that really provide us with the information about the success of that quality management system or the weaknesses in it. And as we move forward, this year has changed a lot since the COVID quarantine, 16 months ago, a year and a half ago now, and have forced us into situations that we really weren't prepared to address. But we're moving forward and we're hanging in there, but there still are opportunities for improvement. And that's really what I'm raising a couple of awareness points for auditors when I say the psychology of the people that you're conducting the audits with. It's a virtual world. It's important to observe, but in the virtual world, you can only observe what's on the screen, what's in front of the camera in front of you. As we know, most of the communications, the message is conveyed by 95% nonverbal communication, by body language, voice inflection, eye contact, the inflexes that people provide when you're discussing or questioning them. How do you get this digitally? And also digitally, we're developing an entirely new language that we'll be talking about here in a couple minutes. And these are important concepts to pick up on and observe if you're going to be successful in conducting a quality management system audit. It's critical to remember too, we're all immigrants in today's digital workplace, meaning that subtle cues that help us understand what others may really be saying require time, patience, and even reflection. And what I'm going to explain here in a couple minutes when I say digital immigrants is the generations that are in the workforce today. The baby boomers, Generation X, and Generation Y is kind of in the transition into the digital natives, as we call them. Those will be the Generation Zs and Millennials that are just starting to enter the workforce. So this new area, this digital communications, provides a lot of opportunities, but there are also a lot of areas for improvement there. And we really are still just beginning to understand those. As you know, auditors, and you're the facilitator of the audit meeting, and your presence makes itself known in obvious ways. It's your skill, the skill of developing the audit, facilitating constructive discussions. Digital meetings demand more preparation than in-person meetings. You have to be well aware of who's going to be your audience. The questions have to be worded. It's going to be a challenge. I wish I had an easy answer, but the questions are going to have to be worded differently depending on the audience and the types of answers, the types of responses you're trying to elicit from the auditees. And as we know, that's nonverbal communication is critical, and that's going to be digital body language. Effective digital body language is about tailoring communications not to fit neutral preferences of one generation over the other, and I'll explain that in a couple minutes, but to meet the demands of the tasks at hand. Remember, our primary objective is to determine the level of performance of a quality management system. And the quality management system has all these human elements contributing to it. I know we're in the digital age, and we talk about Industry 4.0 and Quality 4.0 and the digitization. Well, it doesn't mean it's all equations and numbers. There's still people involved. When the people have not been replaced by artificial intelligence, it's not going to happen in the very near future, that's for sure. And a key difference between a native and a digital adapter to body language styles on formality. And that is something that is very important, auditors, the formality of language of this next generation, to which digitalization is, we call, a primary means of communication. They're the digital natives. They've taken it from, they're bringing the digital communications to a new level of understanding. That's what I'm going to address here. We're in a situation right now that's never before been experienced in the business world, where we've got 4 generations of employees out there. The baby boomers, who are, for the most part, getting ready to retire, very near retirement. There was only a small part of the Generation X's. They were only about 10 years, and there was not a lot of births that took place globally during that time, from 1965 to 1975, roughly. Then the millennials came in, and yeah, they did bring in, they grew up with technology, with computers, desktop computers, smartphones, but they were in a minority. They were overshadowed by the majority of the employees being the baby boomers of Generation X, who really took control of the workforce, and they had to play, I'll say, a lesser role to fit in. But now that the baby boomers are going by the wayside, and we're starting to bring the Generation X's in, who are the digital natives, they've never seen a landline telephone before. In some cases, the supervisor, when they're hired into an organization, is the first real position of authority that they've had to address and to work with. And it's a change for them. I have a summary here of a little bit about the values, characteristics, work preferences of the boomers, Gen X's, and Gen Y's. And the millennials, we're still working on it. Okay, they're new coming into the workforce. And as you see the values, and I'm not going to read all of these, there's quite a bit here, but the baby boomers are much more formalized and recognizing organizational structure and being formal in their responses. They have respect authority. I mean, it's not that they won't question them, but they have respect for them. The Generation X's, again, their communications are very formalized, very structured in the responses. They will question. They will not oppose, but they will question if they're not clear on a subject. And the Generation Y's, well, they've been forced into communicating based on what the boomers and the Xers had already established, but it's really not their primary means of being formal in communication. They've grown up with the email, the text messaging, the social media, and the abbreviations, that are the emoticons that are taking over our communication process. but they've been forced into lesser roles. Well, now as they're losing the boomers and Gen X's and getting more of the millennials and generation Z's in there, and they're becoming the majority in the workforce, formalization is changing in the types of communications, who they communicate with, the wording they choose, the structure of the sentences that they provide. All of that is getting less formal. And if that isn't enough of a challenge psychologically for an auditor to determine who your audience is, who you're going to be directing your questions to, and understanding how their responses are going to be structured, we've gotten even more complex as now we've become a global society. And many of the companies that you'll be auditing and conducting interviews with have different socioculture employees who are also fitting into these generational categories. And just for an example here, I could spend all day discussing the socioculture issues and communications and how to structure it so that it's effective. But in just the time I have allotted here, I've condensed it. Here in the US, Canada, Europe, Australia, and the Middle East, effective communication must be simple, clear, and explicit. Messages are understood at face value. That's the business world as they understand it and they're comfortable with, the professionals in these from these sociocultures. And now that we've become a global society, and you're going to be working with organizations, you might be auditing offices and locations that are in South America, China, India, Southeast Asia. These are high context cultures. Their education levels, their educational process, and the cultures are slightly different. It's inappropriate to spell out certain messages too explicitly. They take it as an insult. They expect respect for their level of expertise or level of knowledge or level of education. So you don't spell questions out or assignments and messages too explicitly. Good communication is sophisticated, nuanced, and layered, understanding it's layered for the various organizations, various levels of organization, whether it's the employees at the front line, as I call them, Gemba, the people that are getting the work done, or the functional areas, the executives, the CEO, the directors, the vice presidents. The communication is layered and sophisticated to fit those levels. And the messages that are spoken are often read between the lines. What's implied, not exactly the words, but what's implied by the message. And just to kind of provide a brief example for the type of communications that I've been referring to here, I have this fictional situation here where you've given an assignment to your supervisor, or you've asked a question as an auditor. And this is a subjective question, and you're asking subject matter experts, the people who are doing the work. And here's Fred, name just chosen at random. Fred's a baby boomer, and he doesn't question authority. And his response is, I'm not sure that I understand your question. I need a little more information here so that I make sure I'm going in the right direction and get you what you're looking for. And Sue, Generation X, who also respects authority, very much structured and formalized, but will ask questions. If it's something that she doesn't understand, she'll be very formal and say, can you further clarify what you're asking, so that I have a good understanding on how to respond, or what your intent is. So those are pretty straightforward. Then we've got Generation Ys and Zs out there, and there's a mixture, right? You can't really say it's structured as Fred was and Sue was. So I arbitrarily selected 3 names, and this is where some of the sociocultures come in. And I just selected a name at random, Abdul, and his culture is you don't question authority, and you do what's asked of you. You do what's asked of your supervisor. And even if he doesn't understand completely, and you've asked the question, you've given an assignment, he would say, and here's my response. This is what I'm going to do. This is what you've asked of me, and here it is. And there's also Teresa in this Generation Y. She's a little bit younger now, All right, this is that generation that's been suppressed, that they've had their communications kind of stepped back a little bit. They've been forced into more formality, but now they're starting to break loose. And she's not being disrespectful. This is just a communications method. What are you talking about? Notice the what is capitalized. In other words, she's confused. She doesn't know what's going on here, and emphasizing the message what in capital letters. And now we have Adolfo, who's now more, even younger yet. He's probably close to that Generation Z. He might even be one of the millennials that's out there. And he's one of the digital natives, grown up, and that's all he's ever seen are the text communications, the social media, the abbreviations. And look at his response, all capital letters, impossible with periods, which emphasizes his response, impossible. Then he says that makes no sense in capital letters, and he adds the small case LOL abbreviation. And I think we all know what that means. Again, none of them are being disrespectful. It's just their normal way of communications. So auditors, be prepared. Be prepared for who you're asking the questions of and the types of responses that they're going to provide you. And then in the business world, you're going to be working with professionals. They're skilled individuals, they're employees, but their methods of communications are going to be different. So what does all this mean? Well, mastering the audit process and knowledge of quality management systems. And it's important, and I can't emphasize this enough, and I think you also are aware of it, eliciting objective and accurate subjective feedback from a diverse workforce. That's what you need, is that objective and accurate subjective feedback where the numbers aren't there, the values aren't there, to really get a good understanding as to how well that quality management system is performing. And remember this last one too. We're correlating static requirements to a dynamic application. Now that's some technical wording. The standards we're working to, the federal regulatory or government standards, the ISO standards, they're updated every 5 years, every 3 to 5 years. So those standards we would consider in 3 to 5 years as being static. The workforce, the society, the business environment is dynamic. Just look at what's happened in the last year and a half. And even if you follow the day-to-day changes as new regulations are placed, new procedures, new policies related to the COVID situation, it's very dynamic. So that is changing. Now that is your challenge, to recognize that you have to take these static requirements and adapt them to the dynamic application based on the objective, subjective feedback you receive. That's where psychology comes in, making that interpretation. So effective communications, clarity, explicitity, and accountability. Common requirements that support success in performing effective quality management system audits. That hasn't changed. What has changed is the business environment and society and the digitization of it and the generational cultures that are out there performing this work. So constant factors for auditors to apply, the value of human capital, employees in an organization. Even as we enter Industry 4.0, human capital is recognized as being a major part of success as we continue to move forward. The robots and artificial intelligence have not taken over yet. And the big point, this is probably one of the most important points of my presentation, is this next one. Quality tools and methodologies to address human needs of the organization and individual must be applied appropriately. I believe quality tools, they've been in place now for 40, 50 years. They've been successful. They can be adapted to the situation, and being able to communicate effectively through quality tools and quality methodologies will help and assist this communications process. It'll help this multi-generational communications. It'll help the multicultural communications, because I believe that professionals who understand quality tools and quality management systems, this is a common language that will link them all together. So using tools to express information, and we can do that. It's not a topic for this presentation, but subjective information can be quantified, it can be displayed using various quality tools, will assist in making this communications process more effective. And remember, the best mix of technology, people, and quality-focused actions will support developing organizational excellence. And that's what the objective is for all companies today, is achieving organizational excellence. That's the ultimate goal. That's part of what quality management systems are designed to accomplish. And auditing can assure that these activities are taking place. So auditors, you've got a big task ahead of you here. You're going to have to become almost psychologists as you determine how to build your checklist and prepare your questions and interpret the answers and responses based on who you are interviewing. So I hope this brief presentation has been of value to you. I know it probably raised more questions than it answered, but that's a good thing. Sometimes just being aware of the situation will help you become more proficient and more effective in accomplishing your tasks. So I want to thank you for watching, and don't forget to purchase your CPD certificate. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Milton Krivokuca, for your presentation and your perspective on the importance of psychology and effective auditing for Quality 4.0. And that concludes this presentation.